Greetings. My name is Petty Officer Third Class Turpin, and I'm here to talk about some things that I learned and researched in the October U.S. Naval Sea Cadet DEA training. So, there's a lot of information that is spread about drug abuse and the use of drugs and addiction. Despite this misinformation that is spread by a whole lot of people, whether it be in schools or places of work or youth clubs such as the Naval Sea Cadets, there are many organizations and individuals who do their best to spread factual information about issues with drug usage. And Sea Cadets and the Red Ribbon Program, sanctioned by the DEA, are two such programs that officially do their best to spread positive and factual information about these issues. So, our objectives for this presentation are to correct any false information and teach or reinforce facts about drugs, briefly discuss and review the origin of Red Ribbon Week and Red Ribbon Month, um, discuss the three most commonly used drugs, describe some of the top effects of said drugs, discuss ways to watch out for those who are using drugs, and finally, discuss ways to help those who are using, abusing, or addicted to drugs. So, Red Ribbon Week is a program that is put on by the DEA or the Drug Enforcement Agency, a part of the United States federal government. It was started in 1985 by high school students who were outraged by the death of Kiki Camarena. Now, I will get into talking more about Kiki later in this presentation, but suffice it to say, he was a singular individual who contributed a whole lot to the fight against drug use and abuse and the lives that it could ruin, and paid with his life for it. High schools, after this incident, high schools across the nation started wearing red ribbons to commemorate the efforts of this individual, as well as to combat drug use, because it was becoming such a prevalent problem. And it was a lot of people were trying to speak out about it. And wearing a red ribbon was a simple way that a lot of people could show their support for this anti drug movement that ended up sweeping the nation in just a couple of years. Every October is Red Ribbon Month, again put on by the DEA, and the last week of every October is Red Ribbon Week. And what this usually means is that there's a lot of information that is spread to schools and other youth organizations, especially regarding drug use, abuse, addiction, and how to stay away from it. I know as a personal example, I went to a Marine Corps JRTC high school for much of my high school, much of the time that I spent in high school, and we lived next. We went to school next to a Marine Corps base, and they would have Marines from the base that were next to us come over several days for Red Ribbon Week and talk to our classes, talk about any personal experiences they had, talk about ways to combat drug use, talk about ways to recognize drug use, and just a whole lot of really helpful information. I know it was very helpful for me. This man right here on the right is Enrique Kiki Camarena. He was known as Kiki to his friends, um, and he was just this man was really just an amazing individual and a great example of what we should strive to be. He literally gave his life to protect others from drugs. After getting out of the Marine Corps, he decided that he wanted to dedicate the rest of his life to tracking down drug smugglers. He had seen so many lives changed for the worse and absolutely ruined by either illegal, like especially illegal, but also legal drugs that were brought across the border from Mexico by all the drug cartels that were operating just across the border, and talking to his mom about the career choice that he wanted to make. His mother and several other people who he considered to be close to him tried to discourage him from taking up this line of work. They tried to convince him that it was too dangerous and also that one person can't make any true change. This man right here took that as a challenge, and years later, after an accomplished career, Upon nearly discovering the leader of an extremely lucrative drug ring that was worth more than billions of dollars, Kiki was kidnapped by five men, tortured, and left for dead about a month later. He was discovered in a ditch on the side of the road, which, with his body mutilated and obviously tortured to death. This is a very sobering example of the lengths that people will go to actually keep their drugs. If you are either addicted to drugs, you're using drugs, you're abusing drugs, or you're just on the side of selling drugs, you will stop at nothing to not let your business or your habit get interrupted. And this man gave his life so that this massive drug cartel could be shut down, in turn, saving thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of lives after his. So, the top used drug in the US, either legally or illegally, is tobacco. Nicotine, which is the addictive substance in tobacco, is commonly used in vaping, which, according to CDC stats, is up 30% in high schools since 2018. Um, I've seen it so many times. My classmates will be stressed and then they'll go to the bathroom and take a hit from their vape to try to de-stress, and then they just end up getting more stressed. They look like they're kind of crazy. They look like they're just not having a good time, even though the nicotine helps them think that they're calming down. It's really not. And the effects include, but are not limited to, decreased appetite, heightened mood, increased heart rate and blood pressure, nausea, diarrhea, and an increased capacity for memory and alertness. So it can act as a stimulant, and it can cause you to have some basic health defects at first, like coughing, bad breath, and some other ones not included here. And it also seems to have some positive effects at first, such as the increased capacity for memory and alertness. But basically, think of it like drinking too many monsters or having one too many cups of coffee. You get all of that extra energy pumped into your brain and body, and your body doesn't really know what to do with it. So you just get all jittery, all excited over nothing. And it can cause your body systems to speed up and eventually overtax themselves, especially with prolonged use. Now, there are some medicinal benefits to professionally approved nicotine, such as decreasing tension, staving off Alzheimer's therapy, staving off Alzheimer's and other um, mental degenerative diseases, especially ones that come with old age. Therapy for ADHD, helping those who either get hyper focused or can't get focused at all to get their focus back on track and kind of find a middle ground. But it is generally not considered for those under 25, as the brain continues to develop until you're around 25, and nicotine can, instead of stimulating brain growth, it can stunt brain growth and development. So there are lots of ways that you can recognize tobacco nicotine use. Again, they're used in many different ways, but one of the most common ways that it is used right now is through vaping. Cigarettes and cigars and pipes and other such ways of using nicotine were very common and still are pretty common to this day, but there's been a pretty large movement to limit the use of nicotine in cigarettes and cigars and get people to stop smoking, as the tar from the burning uh, tobacco causes a lot of lung issues, stains teeth. Um, it can also give you it can give you some bad breath. So you can almost always tell if somebody's smoking a cigarette or a cigar. You'll smell it all around them, on their breath, on their body, in their clothes, in their car. Also, you after prolonged use, usually 5 or more years, you'll see dark stains on the teeth. from cigarettes or cigars, and it's usually even less time if you're using dip or chewing tobacco. Usually, what that is either leaves or some other similar substance where you put it in your mouth and you chew it to kind of get the nicotine out of the substance. Vaping can be a lot more difficult to spot, but again, having had personal experience with it, you can often tell when somebody's either trying to hide their vape or they're looking kind of jittery or something like that. Often there's a smell of like a fruity or sweet smell, such as bubblegum or strawberries or something like that. And if you don't see anybody chewing bubblegum or there obviously aren't any strawberries around, that would be a very good indication that somebody is using a vape because many of them are flavored so that people feel better about ingesting a drug into their body. Vapes can also cause nosebleeds and dry mouth. So if you somebody see somebody who's constantly licking their lips, or they're oftentimes having nosebleeds, or they have to drink a whole ton of water to try to get rid of a dry mouth, that could also be an indication that they are vaping. Also, if you see a vape, they often look like a pen or a USB drive. So pretty small and easy to hide. But if you see like a random USB drive just sitting on somebody's desk or somebody's walking around holding a USB drive in their hand, that's not exactly normal. So that would be a pretty good indication that somebody is vaping or using a vape. Unsurprisingly, the second most commonly used drug, and although it is legal in the US, is alcohol. Alcohol has been around longer than just about any other drug. You take some sort of liquid from grain or fruit or some other substance, usually organically based, and you just let it sit and it ferments. And a chemical reaction occurs that turns it into alcohol, which is a brain altering depressant. What that means is that it slows down your mental and physical functions. You lose your inhibitions, your reaction time gets decreased. You can move erratically and unpredictably. You'll start to see slurred speech. People won't be making the best decisions. And this is often seen in things like car crashes, as indicated by that picture in there. You have a slowed down reaction time. And so you can't react to a negative traffic situation as quickly. And you can very easily find yourself in a not so good position in your vehicle. While it takes a lot of alcohol to seriously harm you long term, it only takes a little bit to make you unaware of your surroundings and get you hooked on that alcohol. Always have a sober designated driver. Close to 30% of all automobile accidents are related to drunk driving. That means almost one in three accidents that you see are somehow related to drunk driving, whether it's the person has been drinking recently and they're mentally and physically impaired, or people in the vehicle are drunk and distracting the driver, or just somebody else in another vehicle crashes into you because they were drunk driving. There are so many accidents and lives lost from the use of alcohol, and it's really very a sad and sobering thing. But unfortunately, it's legal, and so many people use this drug that more awareness needs to be spread about it. Um, More facts and effects of alcohol. Some of the long term effects are obviously including, but not limited to, there's a much longer list, but these are some of the top effects. Behavior changes, hallucinations, slurred speech, as I was mentioning earlier, cancer, increased susceptibility to diseases and bacteria, fatigue, stomach issues, heart damage, increased chance of stroke and heart attack, addiction and alcoholism, blackouts, decreased ability to absorb necessary nutrients, increased risk of diabetes, numbness in the extremities, muscle cramps, damage to an unborn fetus in pregnant woman, weak bones, and cirrhosis of the liver. I'm not going to be able to go into detail on every single one of these effects, but some of the main ones, behavior changes, hallucinations, and slurred speech, those are some of the immediate effects you can see after just a little bit of alcohol usage. you can almost always tell when somebody's drunk or just a little tipsy. Their behavior is just a little bit off. They're going to be slurring their speech. They're not going to be talking smoothly. They're not going to be able to think very well about what they're saying before they say it. They might think that there's a situation around them that isn't actually happening and might respond differently than if they could see reality around them. Some of the longer term effects, cancer, you have a much higher chance of getting cancer, and you have a much decreased chance of surviving cancer if you are a long-term alcohol usage. Also, it can reduce the effectiveness of your immune system. So, if you drink a lot of alcohol, you're not going to be able to fend off viruses and bacteria as well because your body is so inundated with the drug. It's basically drunk, so it doesn't know what to fend off and what to fight. Also, a very important one, stroke and heart attack. Lots of alcohol usage. It's one of the main things that it's linked to long term is heart problems. So whether it be the stroke or the heart attack or just other basic lung problem, my apologies, heart problems, um, they are a leading cause of death in alcoholics. Uh, Blackouts also, if you spend the night drinking, you're going to eventually pass out because there's too much alcohol in your body. You're going to wake up the next morning and barely even remember what you did. And this is also extremely important and sad. It can cause damage to an unborn fetus in a pregnant woman. So if you're pregnant, you have a child inside of you and you drink a lot of alcohol, that drug is getting sent to the baby through the umbilical cord, and they might actually be born having to be dependent on alcohol, which could kill them if they are brought off of that. And it's really sad and extremely dangerous. I hope that nobody who is pregnant would ever even consider taking alcohol, if not for their health, but even if it's just for the baby's health. Some more of the facts and effects about alcohol. You won't notice a lot of the aforementioned effects immediately, except for the first few ones like slurred speech and inhibited reaction time, etc. But alcohol is a slippery slope. You start thinking you can control it, but it will end up controlling you. For example, over 50% of the US population engages in drinking on a monthly basis. That means that 1 out of 2 people has had a drink of alcohol this month that you know. So 50% of the people that you know drink alcohol, which is why it is such a commonly used drug and so widespread and also has become so much of a problem in today's society. Additionally, over a quarter of the US population engages in binge drinking annually. So that means 1 out of 4 people that you know this year, at some point, they either have or will go on an all night drinking spree or something like that, where they'll just drink until they drop, quite literally. They'll consume so much alcohol that their body won't be able to handle it and they'll just pass out. And another interesting and kind of scary statistic is that alcohol misuse has cost the U.S. over 249 billion annually. Now that's an average. That's obviously not the exact number. It is very difficult to find exact statistics on it, and also you never know how many people are actually drinking or have caused damage that costs money. But that's almost half of what the U.S. spends on their military and defense budget. So, with the amount of money that it takes to cover salaries and purchasing equipment and other military related items for all 6 branches of the military, that's how much money alcohol misuse has cost the US. And that's just in the US. That's not even considering the seven, almost 7 billion other people in the entire planet. This is a major problem in the US, but it's also a major problem everywhere else in the world. Some of the main ways that you can recognize alcohol use and abuse. the inability to control when or how much you're drinking. Someone is often very irritable, or they look drunk or uncoordinated. Somebody is storing alcohol in unusual places or has secret stashes around the house where they're trying to hide alcohol from, for example, their spouse or their roommate or something like that, because they don't want to know, they don't want other people to know that they have an alcohol problem. Also, if somebody says that they can quit drinking whenever they want, if you bring it up as an issue, but they never do, that's also a major indication that they are using, or not only just using, but abusing alcohol, or they might be addicted. At that point, you're going to want to get that person some help. We'll get into how to get somebody help a little bit later, but if you know somebody who is using or abusing or addicted to alcohol, please get them help. Again, going back to storing alcohol in unusual places or secret stashes, if somebody is often drinking in secret, you walk in on them in an area and they quickly try to hide that they're drinking or something like that. That would indicate that they have a problem. If they're trying to hide it from you, that's not good. And additionally, going back to the effects that we were talking about from earlier, if you're experiencing memory loss, let's say you're going out with somebody for an evening and they drink a lot, and you have you have a good time, you're at a party or something like that, but the next day you they can't remember anything about what you did or what they said or what happened to them the previous night. That's probably an indication that they have a problem. That would be binge drinking, because they're drinking until they black out and can't remember what happened or what they said or did or thought. Our final top three drugs used in the US is actually an illegal drug. And I'm sure almost anybody would easily be able to recognize this plant. It is so extremely common, especially in the younger culture today, with younger children, teenagers, people in their 20s. Almost anybody would be able to recognize this plant. And it is the third most commonly used drug in the US. It is one of the most controversial drug related issues as well, because currently recreational recreational marijuana use is legal in some states, in some parts of the US, also in Canada and some other nations worldwide. They have legalized the use of marijuana not just for medicinal purposes, but for recreational purposes. Again, you probably recognize this, but it has many legal medicinal uses, but is also widely used illegally in those states where recreational use is not is against the law. And it is one of the most dangerous common drugs, as depending upon the person taking it and any other drugs or medicines that they might be taking, it can function as a depressant, a stimulant, a hallucinogen, or all three at the same time. Now, a depressant, as we discussed with alcohol, is something that slows down your mental and physical faculties. A stimulant is something that speeds up your mental or physical faculties. And a hallucinogen is something that will take you on a trip, as it is commonly referred to in drug culture. You will feel as if you were disconnected from reality. You'll see things that aren't there. You'll feel things that aren't there. We aren't going to get into heroin or crack cocaine or methamphetamines in this presentation, but those are several good examples of drugs that can act as hallucinogens, where you'll see or feel things that aren't there. Methamphetamine users experience a phenomenon called meth bugs, where they feel like they have these itchy little creatures crawling around under their skin, and they will literally scratch their skin raw until they are bleeding, and they scratch into their flesh because they're trying to get it rid of these bugs that really aren't even there. So, as you can probably see, it could be extremely dangerous, especially if um, the drug is acting as a hallucinogen along with being acting as a depressant or a stimulant at the same time. And over 35 million people in the US are currently using marijuana, either medicinally or recreationally, um, whether that be legally or illegally. Again, isn't an exact number because if somebody's illegally using marijuana, they're probably not going to tell you for a study. But this is about as accurate of a number as we can get. Now, if you think about it, the population of the US is around 250 million. So 35 million users in the US, that's over 10% of the entire US population. That is a very big number. So that means over 1 in 10 people that you know, there's a good chance that they are currently or have used marijuana in the past. Some of the effects of marijuana are, again, including but not limited to memory loss, anxiety, fear, and panic attacks, hallucinations, increased risk of a stroke, heart disease, and heart attack. Again, looking back at some of those heart problems that alcohol could also cause, problems with coordination and abnormal behaviors. Often people will use marijuana as a chance to expand their mind or to feel as if they're being more creative. This actually has been disproven scientifically. It doesn't make you more creative. You may feel more creative. Like, for example, if you experience a hallucination where you see things around you and your brain creates a very creative world that you're living in that isn't reality, you may feel as if you're being more creative. But once the drug's effects are gone, it has been proven that it can actually cause a decrease in IQ up to 10 to 15 points with prolonged marijuana use. That is a very significant loss in intelligence. And many people don't realize that this is actually a very big problem. You don't want to lose your smarts. Even though you might be trying to get yourself more smart, the only way to do that is to study and to learn and to read. There's no quick, easy fix to make yourself more intelligent by using a drug. And moving on to some of the long term effects, as I mentioned, you can have a significant decrease in your intelligence quotient, a reduction in school performance, impaired thinking and cognitive ability. So you'll be able to think less um, specifically and well after the drug effects wear off, and is often a gateway to more powerful substances such as crack cocaine or heroin. And keep this in mind if you are voting. One of the one of the things that you should consider if you live in an area that does not consider marijuana use to be legal, vote for somebody who is against legalizing marijuana use. It is such a huge problem in today's culture that we don't need this out on the street. uh, Recognizing marijuana abuse, there are a lot of different effects that you can be on the lookout for. But some of these are bloodshot eyes, increased appetite, because it can make you lose weight, dry mouth, similar to vaping effects. You can also gain weight depending upon the person. This is a very scary thing because depending upon the person or other drugs or medicines that you might be using or medical issues that you might have, it can have extremely different effects. So you never know how it's going to um, either hurt your body or do something bad to your organs or systems. You can get a lack of motivation or an overbearing chill vibe. Basically, what that means is many people will take marijuana to relax. And so they'll kind of just be sitting there with no motivation to do anything. If they need to be doing school, they'll take marijuana and they'll just sit back as if they didn't have a care in the world because they're trying to make their problems go away. It can also cause memory impairment because you might be thinking creatively at the time of the marijuana use, but once that drug effect wears off, you're not going to remember pretty much anything that you're thinking about. And all of that information that you just gained or the creativity that you just imagined in your mind, that's all going to be gone. And it can also cause a lack of coordination. So you could appear to be drunk. You could have slurred words, or you might not be pairing your words together using wrong words. Your vocabulary will decrease in size. Um, and it can just cause you a lot of problems in regards to brain functions. Now, moving on to how to prevent drug abuse and help those who are using or abusing or addicted to drugs. Drug use is extremely common in schools. Having just graduated high school, I know how significant it is. I know many people who have used marijuana. I would see people vaping in the bathrooms or sometimes just in class, just blatantly pull out a vape and take a hit and start smoking in front of the entire class. It's really very sad because they think they need it to help them in their classes, or they think they need it because they're going to feel sick if they don't use their drug. So you might want, since schools are such a common field for the use of drugs, you might want to talk to your school leadership or your counselor or a club that your school has about holding classes or rallies to spread information about drug use, abuse, and addiction, and to offer help to those who might be struggling with substance abuse. Now, this wouldn't be to call out anybody in particular, but if you don't offer help, then nobody's going to even think about getting help, and you might as well give somebody the opportunity to get help if they want it. There's no way to force anybody into getting help. If that person wants to do drugs, they're going to do drugs, and there's really not that much you can do about it. But if you are if you can do something, do something. Going back to Kiki Camarena, he didn't those around him didn't think that he, as a single individual, could really do that much to fight drugs, but he has had a long standing effect for many years on the fight against drug use, abuse, and addiction. If you know somebody personally who is using drugs, talk to the person. Make sure you understand what they're going through, because you don't want to push them away. If you start judging or criticizing them, they're going to think that you don't care about them as a person. You just think that using drugs is wrong, and you just you're judging them for that. You don't want to do that. You want to be kind, you want to be understanding, you want to be supportive, but you also need to sometimes show a little bit of tough love. If your best friend, for say for example, is doing drugs, and you need to kind of smack some sense into them, either literally or figuratively, make sure you do that, because I know people who have either died or gotten very close to dying from overdosing on drugs because they didn't listen when somebody told them to stop. They didn't think they had a problem, but by the time they realized they had a problem, it was too late and they were hooked and they didn't know how to get help. So make sure that you understand what the person is going through. Make sure you gather as much information as you can so that you can help them, and get help immediately from a professional. You probably don't know how to safely get somebody off of a drug, because quitting cold turkey, if you force somebody to quit cold turkey, you could end up killing them because their body builds up a need for the drug. So you don't, it would almost be like taking them off of food or water. They're going to get extremely sick, and they'll either have really bad health effects or they might die. You don't want to be the cause for that. So if that's law enforcement, school counselor, a drug helpline, Alcoholics Anonymous, Nicotine Anonymous, there are a lot of different ways that you can get professional help for somebody who is using, abusing, or addicted to drugs. There's a more comprehensive list out there, but it would take hours to go through everything. But those are some of the main places that you could get a good start on finding professional help for a friend or a family member or somebody you know who is struggling with drug use. You could also direct them to the National Drug Helpline, which is the numbers right there on the screen, 1-800-662-4357, and you can talk to professional counselors who can either walk you through helping somebody with drugs, or if you know you have a drug problem, you can call this number. They're going to help you, they're going to counsel you, they're going to advise you if you need medical help. They're going to tell you where to go to get yourself off of this drug problem. You can also go to the website at www.samhsa.gov, where you can also find a chat feature where you have 24/7 available support with professionally trained counselors who can help you or help you get somebody else away from drugs. In conclusion, you might not think that you can do much. You might think, I'm only one person. What can I do? There's no way that I can make that much of a difference. Remember Kiki Camarena. He was discouraged by so many people in his life. Like, don't do this. You're not going to be able to make a difference. It's going to be dangerous. You're probably going to get hurt. And even though they were right, even though he did give his life, he was killed, he was tortured, he was kidnapped, he was threatened. He went through so much hurt and pain, but he was doing it because he cared about the people around him. He didn't want other people to get caught up in drugs and have their lives ruined by drugs. So he gave his life to prevent others from getting hurt by those substances. And he quite literally started a nationwide anti drug movement. By this point, he has affected millions of young people's lives. And even though everybody might not know his name, I'm sure he doesn't want everybody to know his name. I'm sure he doesn't want to be famous. Um, he was just there to make a difference. He was there to give his help to a problem that he saw. So keep that in mind. If you see a problem, don't think that you can't fix it just because you're one person. Think of how you can help and make sure you do it in the correct way. But there's always a way to help somebody. Additionally, be on the lookout for those who use drugs. And one of the ways that you can make a difference is to help to inform and educate. Say you know somebody who is using marijuana, and their reason for using it is that they want to expand their mind and get smarter and be more creative. Show them evidence that what they are saying or the reason that they are using the drug is not valid. It has been scientifically disproven. And that could maybe light a, you know, set off a light bulb in their head and start them on the path of thinking, oh, this isn't helping me. This is actually going to harm me in the long run. And it's probably already harmed me by now. I need help if I'm going to get out of this and not have any, um, bad health side effects. So you never know what a little word or education might do to somebody to help them get the assistance that they need. Most importantly, be informed and educated yourself. Know the facts and the effects of drugs. There are so many drugs out there, many more than the three very common ones that I just listed and talked about today. Um, if you know the facts and effects about these drugs, it's the best dissuasion against using those drugs. Because if you know that alcohol or tobacco or vaping or nicotine or marijuana or even any other type of drug, um, illicit prescription drug usage, heroin, methamphetamines, LSD, cocaine, all the other drugs out there, if you know the effects, there's no way in the world that you are going to want to actually use that drug. And even though somebody might tell you that, oh, it's going to help you, oh, it's going to help you expand your mind, oh, it's going to do this good thing for you, oh, come on, everybody else is doing it. Stay away from that peer pressure. Stay away from those false hopes that are false hopes and promises that are given by drugs. You will thank yourself in the future. Thank you very much. And um, I appreciate you listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Um, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Keep what I have just said in mind, help educate those around you, and stay drug free. Thank you very much.